Hello and welcome to this special webinar from ABBYY and NelsonHall. Today our hot topic is process mining, and we will be discussing the state of process discovery and mining, where it's been and where it's going, real world use cases for process discovery and mining, plus how they complement intelligent automation, and recommendations for enterprises at all stages of their automation journey. Now, in 2021, analyst firm NelsonHall estimated the global process discovery and mining market to be at around $670 million. By 2025, they project it will grow to around $4.3 billion. The pandemic exposed blind spots in business processes across all industries. To stay competitive in this growing market, you need to improve your process flows and derive actionable insights. And process mining shows the way forward. ABBYY is proud to have been named a leader in the NelsonHall NEAT evaluation for process mining for the second year. And we'll be hearing more about that later. But first, let's welcome Mike Smart to the show. Mike Smart is a senior analyst and operations officer at NelsonHall. His main research focus is on digital transformation technologies, including RPA, blockchain, IoT, artificial intelligence, cognitive and machine learning. Highly regarded for his analytical talents, Mike leads data modeling and analytics initiatives in support of NelsonHall's market forecasts and surveys. He was responsible for transforming NelsonHall's extensive global market forecast engine, including the introduction of NelsonHall's unique interactive self-forecasting tool. Welcome, Mike, and I believe you've got a presentation for us, and then we're also going to hear from Bruce Orcutt of ABBYY, and we'll discuss this topic in more detail. But Mike, welcome.
Thank you very much, Scott. So let's get my presentation up. So I'm here today to talk about the current and future state of the process understanding market and a bit about the NEAT results that had ABBYY as a leader. So if I start, I hopefully am not shocking anyone on this call if I describe process discovery or task mining as having an application sitting on a user's machine and in one way or another recording their actions, and process mining as taking event logs from enterprise systems. All of those get fed into process understanding platforms, and through analytics, they amalgamate the data to let an organization have a greater understanding of their processes. You can use one or the other, but generally you get a better result if you use both process discovery and process mining together. But there are only about 5 or 6 platforms that do both of them. So if we move on, the current state of process understanding I've got here, with the information from both of the process understanding platform types, what are the main insights users are getting and how are they applying those insights? It's no surprise I've got it here on the left that the main thing organizations are looking for as part of using a process understanding platform is to gain a better insight on their processes. You first need to know what's going wrong to know how to improve it, right? And that can take a number of forms that I've got listed here. There's creating process documentation. There's analyzing variations in the process. There's tracking current process KPIs and reporting them through a dashboard or having the numbers exportable. And there's some light root cause analysis. Likewise, there's improving the existing process. So that's when organizations use the data that they've gathered on a said process and try and improve it somewhat. So for process optimization, that's looking where the bottlenecks are or the flow of data or the general process itself and trying to reduce inefficiencies or maximize customer satisfaction in some cases. And organizations are using, and then conformance checking. So if you've got data on the process and what the process should be, and you've got task mining working. So you've got a look at what each user is doing. You can check if they're varying from the process when they shouldn't. And a bit more recently, there's, as a major accelerator of the whole process understanding market, there's automation. The majority of the automation enablement that we see at the moment is identifying processes that have a high potential for automation. But there's been some work in sending through a process or the skeleton of a process through to an automation platform to be automated. It's vitally important to the automation space because at the moment, there's always going to be a shortage of automation professionals and a backlog of processes to be automated. And if we can focus down onto the best processes to be automated, that certainly gets us a long way there. So last year, we conducted an assessment of the process understanding platform market, as part of which we asked for a couple of clients that we could interview and get their feedback, not only on the vendors themselves and the platforms themselves, but on their view of the market and what they were after. So one of the questions that we asked, that I've got the data up here, was the benefits they were looking to achieve by selecting a process understanding platform or going down this track. And if we look at some of the data we've got here, the highly important benefits are on the left-hand side, and the second column is what percentage of the clients interviewed said that they were a highly important benefit they were after. There's some other responses I'll get into in a minute or two, but these are the ones that clients were, at least 40% of clients said were highly important to them. So the most important benefits, improving process or the visibility of a process, along with the third, so reducing the effort to identify process steps and variations, along with the fourth and fifth, so identification of the KPI impact and the root cause. That all fits into where I was saying on the slide before of understanding the process. The second, which is reducing the average process cycle times, and the last, which is identification of processes to be automated. They fit into that right-hand side that I was talking about there. What's fantastic to see across the clients surveyed is the general satisfaction with all their platforms. So of all the clients satisfied, approximately 75% plus were satisfied in these core capabilities, which is certainly greater than last year's survey. It should probably be noted, though, that clients are starting to demand a bit more from their process understanding platforms, and thankfully the process understanding platform owners are already building those capabilities. So there we go. So what's the future of the market? You can see here I've added in a third category, which is building improved processes. So that's a natural expansion of building improved processes or improving the existing process, but it focuses more on rebuilding a process and integrating it into other platforms to make sure the best process is in place from now on. If we start with the existing capabilities with scope for improvement, stronger root cause analysis. We aren't at any sort of state for root cause analysis where the benefits it can deliver are maximized. So, for example, it's pretty uncommon to get any sort of root cause analysis that puts the root cause or the outcome in a business outcome sense. On a similar and connected note, there's scenario and what-if testing on business outcomes. So it does exist to some extent at the moment. However, those modules are mainly using process experts presenting the data to process experts, and they're constructing models and altering parameters to test data in a standard Monte Carlo scenario. In the future, the platforms should be aiming to do a lot more of the heavy lifting here. So using AI to construct models, or using model-free digital twins that understand the behaviors and the factors that are dictating an event, and modeling the resources that an event or a process is using. It's also vitally important to do this step, even if you're hoping to automate. You don't want to be automating, for want of a better word, a inefficient process. It's much better to go through and fix a process and then automate it. Another area I'm already seeing some platforms providing some level of capability is on user training. So by this stage, we know our process, we understand the steps a user does to perform a task, and because we've got in task discovery, at least, or process discovery, task mining, at least, we've got an application sitting on the end user's machine. We can always present that data back to a user. So in at least one use case I've seen, the user can call on the process discovery application for help on a process that they're doing, and that overlays onto the applications that the user is using for the process. For example, highlighting the next field that they should be interested in, or providing tooltips on what they should be doing. And I did hint about it before. On our survey, there was 1 or 2 results that had clients saying there were highly important benefits that they were seeking, but they were less than 40%. One of those was on user training, coming in at 38% of the clients we surveyed said it was a very important piece. However, it's worth taking that with a pinch of salt, in that some clients are just using process definition documents to help guide training. A slightly loftier target is on the automation side. Listed here is the automation of automation. So when I spoke about automation enablement on improving the process, it's not unusual for that to take a form where you're only providing the automation potential rating, or some platforms going a bit above and beyond and providing bare bone skeletons for the automation platform to build on. Improvements here should be focused on decreasing the amount of work when you pass through a process to the automation platform, turning the last mile work that you're doing into a last 100 meters. So, one example of this is if you've discovered, or if you've mined a process that has 60 variations at the moment, platforms in and large, you can only put 1 variation to the automation side at a time. And there you've got the automation professionals to either build in other variations or go back to the process understanding platform and then push a second variation across. That shouldn't really be the case. It should be a lot more selecting the variations that you want and pushing them over as a group. And finally, on this slide, BPM integrations. It's a bit more future looking, this one, but it's using BPM or integrations into BPM execution tools to support the analytics there and trigger workflows. So it's a bit of a nascent space, but some activity that I've seen here or somewhat analogous has been on call center routing. So if you understand the call center operations, you understand all the users in there who are helping clients with calls, for example, if a problem comes in, you can divert that call to the best agent to handle it. Likewise, you can use machine learning to detect a potentially problematic event in an automated process or in any process and escalate it to a human or escalate it to management. So here I've put, I've called it an achievable nirvana for process understanding. And I do think this is somewhere we can get to, or we can get most of this within the first 12 to 24 months from here. So if we look at the process here, we've got first box on the top left, the process discovery and mining technologies are deployed. This should get much easier than it is currently. There's already a lot of work being done on this. Traditionally, it's been hard to win over IT to implement process mining technology. There's data security things that they've worried about in the past. There's not having standard connectors, and that's created a bit of pushback. That's diminishing at the moment, but it should continue to diminish now. It's fairly important to have process discovery and mining working together. You can get I like to think of it as process mining is a 1,000-foot view of a process, taking those process logs, whereas the process discovery or the task mining gives a boots on the ground assessment. And you also can't do, or you can't really do conformance checking without task mining process discovery in there as well. So down onto the second box now. You gather all this data and it's automatically integrated. So one or two platforms at the moment who are doing both process discovery and mining. It can be somewhat hard to integrate the data from both. You use this data, you might have a couple of minor additions from process expert, but you form a digital twin of a process. The process provides the analyst, it highlights for them bottlenecks, the process flows, any variations, it does path analysis, and provides loads of views like that. At the moment, you can get a lot of these views anyway, and ABBYY do a lot of them. But I think it's fair to say that it's not incredibly proactive. A user, a process analyst, has to be on the platform looking through the different views to try and spot the issues. Whereas I can see in the next year or two a more proactive approach with the platforms suggesting or highlighting key areas for the analyst to look at. Still in this second box, the platform uses scenario testing to provide suggestions on how to optimize a process, because it's highlighted these problem areas, and provide the best outcome, whether that's cost reduction or better customer ratings, which can be taken on board by the client or not really. As I was saying, it's fairly Monte Carlo based at the moment, where you could have, you could say a process is coming in once and it'll be the exact same as a process coming in a millionth time. So it's not really understanding the resource implications of a process. I can see that being a lot smarter in the future as well. The process understanding strategies are helping to build automation first processes. And when it comes to pushing a process through to the automation platforms, you're getting substantial instructions, I would say, compared to what it would be at the moment. You can highlight multiple variations, and you can push as much of the process as can be automated as possible across, leaving just the human in the loop work to go through. And then following some testing of the process and the automation, you're onto this third block down here now. And that's, you've got a process that's ready to launch. You've still got the process discovery or task mining bots on end user machines. You can use them to guide a user through any human-in-the-loop, non-automatable task for training purposes. And likewise, as we've got at the moment, conformance checking is continuously monitoring the users, helping them if they stray from a process, and reporting any non-compliance, or more importantly, I suppose, anything that looks like it's going to stray into non-compliance. So now that the process is live, we're shifting onto the right-hand box. The process understanding engine should be driving the processes against models formed in the scenario and what if testing, and aiming to continuously optimize against a business metric, cost, or reward. It can also be triggering workflows. So as the example before, routing a task to the most appropriate human in the loop. And it's important here as well that you still keep the process discovery and task mining engines in use. Even if you're using RPA, those tools have a great view of the performance of the RPA segment of a process. What they can't do is provide you with analytics on the overall process. So it's important to still keep some process discovery, process mining in there as well. So on to the NelsonHall assessment of the process discovery and mining piece, and on our NEAT, which is our quadrant-based graph. It's fairly similar to other quadrant-based graphs you see, really. The difference between ours, I suppose, is we build the data out of those client interviews that we have, as well as the analysts' views and criteria that we build on. And we put in multiple weightings. So if the client is only after, for some reason, process discovery, we can just focus on that. So for example, one criteria that we've got on the left here, the process visualization, that's built on not only the client's opinions of that piece of the offering or that piece of the platform, but also the analyst view on does it include, for example, can you filter onto a particular process? Can you get a BPMN view or a social network view? Custom filters, hierarchies, pre-built visuals, bottleneck analysis, all those visualization tools that would help you in organizing a process. So as I say, that was 38 criteria, I believe, that we interviewed clients on. Clients were actually asked 160 questions when it came down to it on the process understanding platform that they were using and the general needs in the market. And the weightings we ended up producing were plan, process change, discovery or desktop discovery, and process mining. So let's give the results here. So you can see on the left-hand side just one of the weightings that we had for ABBYY, which was the process change or facilitating process change. And you can see ABBYY in the leaders quadrant near the top right, or in the top right quadrant. So I'm more than happy to share a bit of feedback that we got from a couple of the clients and ourselves at NelsonHall. You can see on the right-hand side here a couple of the pieces of criteria that ABBYY scored very highly on. So the ease of aggregating the logs, for example, it was a 5 out of 5. The desktop discovery pricing models, 5 out of 5, and that was client rated. Range of pre-built templates for analysis, that was a 4, and that was still much higher than the competitors on here. And a client, or the overall business impact rating we gave was a 4.5. And I think that's because we round to the nearest 0.5, and it was a 4.6 before. So I had to pull that down rather than push it up. When it came to the client feedback in particular, there was a lot of praise when it came to being able to visualize the process. So ABBYY Timeline in particular, the process schema that's offered there and the breakdown. So I'll use a quote I have here. The process schema and breakdown is another functionality which is quick and fast and gets to the nitty-gritty. That's a user quote. Likewise, the user interface is intuitive, very stable, and works well. So I'm getting a lot of feedback such as that through, as well as my own views on the platform and being able to see the platform in action as well. Likewise, when it comes to reducing the effort on gathering the information, there were at least 2 clients that were extremely happy with the ETL layer, which is Timeline's extract, load, transform layer, which helps you take logs and load them into the system and do a lot of the work that you traditionally, or I suppose you might need in the past to have someone trained up on Power Query or Tableau or anything like that. Now it's business user based. I imagine that there's probably 1 or 2 areas that your clients or potential clients on the call of where we had 1 or 2 clients saying ABBYY could probably improve, and these were across the line for the majority, and one it's something that we've already mentioned. It was on automating some analysis. So at the moment, as I said before, you have to be somewhat proactive. You have to use all the views, the 20 views that ABBYY give you. Normally you find the issue in the first 1 or 2, but you can have all those views to try and find some issues with your process. So clients were saying, maybe this can be a bit more proactive. And from our side, the user training, it's not something that ABBYY focuses on. So when it comes down to it, that sort of piece when it comes to a Nirvana, it will be using that data and taking it over to a third-party application for training, or in some other way helping the users train their users. But overall, the feedback was very strong for ABBYY. So users were saying the likelihood to recommend the platform was coming in at, again, out of 5, a 4.5. And if I just pick up another quote, this is because the ease of use of a platform versus other platforms that we evaluated. The ease of being able to take that log data and quickly transform it and visualize it is much easier in Timeline. So that's a client quote. On the NelsonHall side, we think ABBYY does extremely well when it comes to collecting data from the process discovery and process mining side, translating it, and using the 20-odd standard analysis views to help clients understand what the process is and how they can improve it. So sped through a bit there, but hopefully that gives you an overall view of not only the process discovery and mining market, now, the future, and a bit of ABBYY. Scott.
Thank you, Mike. It looks like the sun's come out wherever you are as well, so that's got to be a good thing. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Really good insights there. And I'm going to bring Bruce in at this stage. Bruce is the Senior Vice President of Product Marketing at ABBYY. And as you heard, Mike's already had some great things to say about the company and what those guys are doing. Bruce is a veteran, that's the word that he uses, product marketing and product management executive with more than 20 years of experience in enterprise software. As Senior Vice President of Product Marketing at ABBYY, Bruce drives global product marketing strategies across the company's entire digital intelligence portfolio of products. And he's played a pivotal role in envisioning and launching innovative solutions that have improved customer engagement, increased revenue, and enhanced competitive advantage for ABBYY customers. Welcome to the show, Bruce.
Thank you very much, Scott. Pleasure to be here.
And I believe you've also got a brief presentation that
Very
you'll
brief.
run through as well.
Just a couple of items, yep, and then we'll get to the wonderful part about the Q&A. So hopefully people are queuing up some questions for us and for Mike especially. But we certainly appreciated NelsonHall and what they're doing for the industry overall by going out and doing these assessments and actually talking to customers. You know, it's easy to get just some feedback or some responses, but when you actually get the customers involved and the customers participate in the scoring and the analysis, you tend to get a really good sense of really what's happening and how these products are behaving. And so, you know, we're really excited that we came in and we're rated as a leader, and we're excited about what the potential for this portfolio and for this capability is for our customers. But it's really about a transformation problem, and ABBYY takes a really interesting approach to it because we have the exceptional process mining and task mining capabilities that were assessed here by NelsonHall. But we also have the ability from our legacy business, our historic business, of transforming content, understanding business documents and data that really is driving a process. And what we knew early on and what we saw was that every time we processed the document for a customer, it really was for a much broader onboarding, new account opening, loan origination, mortgage lending, you know, any other type of experience that was around a bigger process. So combining the ability to understand the end-to-end process, understand how things flow through a process, along with the data that comes from documents, we think is really important and compelling. And we are very pleased with the results we've achieved with customers, just because of the fact that now they're able to understand all the process, have that visibility, and then they can take proactive steps to bring the automation to bear, which everybody's excited to do. So really, what we're focused on really is the combination of process and task mining, which Mike articulated, which we think is really compelling, because we don't think you can do one without the other, because it's really about the unified experience and the end-to-end process, because when things happen on the desktop, many times that's dark and customers don't know, or enterprises don't know what's truly happening. So the ability to discover that and understand that context and that relationship and that how things flow once the users are engaged on their desktop is really important to really automating the end-to-end and bringing about that great ROI. And then finally, my last slide, and we can get to the wonderful questions that we have, is really around how ABBYY views this capability. So we combine the process and task mining together, and then with all the various analytical tools. What we see, though, is really the strength in the modeling and things like that, but well as the monitoring going on. So once people come up and they identified all the problems, the bottlenecks, and all the issues with their processes, and they do go ahead and bring automation to bear to solve that or accelerate those transactions or improve the revenue acceleration, then the opportunity to monitor that and predict how the behavior is going to be and alert is really, really important to these customers and these enterprises. So we feel like this ability to do it on one platform is really compelling. We appreciated the fact that NelsonHall assessed us so well, and we're excited about the future of this capability for our customers. So back to you, Scott.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. As you said, we're handing over to questions now. If you do have any questions and you're joining us live, you can ask those into the chat window on the side of the presentation there, or underneath the presentation. I do have some questions here that have come through. Mike, I think I'm going to turn to you first, actually. There's a question here. It says, is process mining more beneficial in discovery pre-automation or when used for monitoring services post-deployment?
Okay, it can be useful in both, and it should probably be used in both. Where I see it used at the moment, clients are liking having discovery and mining in there as a route to automation. There is some work that needs being done in realigning their views that once it's automated, you can still use the process discovery and mining platforms, and you probably should, to get a view on how the process is still operating. As I said during the presentation, it's automation platforms are great at reporting on how the automation is going. They don't see any of the human in the loop work.
Yeah.
So I'd still use both, but probably clients at the moment are more aiming towards pre-automation than post.
What about you, Bruce? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think a lot of our customers believe they're coming out and they're going to deal with it up front and project and understand what's happening. But also, a lot of them are pretty challenged by the fact they thought they automated everything up front when they bought these amazing RPA packages and these BPM systems. They're oftentimes confused or shocked to see what absolutely is happening with the process after they implemented a lot of the automation they thought was to solve their particular problem. So it works well on both sides, but it's often quite fascinating to see customers who think they automated something, then run the tools and discover, wow, we really have a lot of problems still with that process. So it's on both sides.
Okay, right. Okay, on both sides. Okay, Mike, do you see a value gap in vendors only offering process mining versus those providing process mining and task or desktop mining?
Yes, yeah. When it comes to, if you're only looking at the system logs, you can get a view of how a process is operating. You don't see the down and dirty, what is happening on a screen, how users are operating. So you get that 1,000-foot view, you don't get the boots on the ground view. So having both in there is the best. I tend to lean more on the process discovery task mining side than the log piece, but that's probably because I'm an automation guy as well.
Okay, I'm just going to take a question here that's come in from Zan Miller, I believe. I hope I've pronounced that right. It says, what do you find the best tools and approaches to obtain event logs for business service delivery process? So what are the best tools and approaches for that?
So I'll try first, and then Bruce can jump in. If you're using a more mature platform, there's some pre-built integrations that you can have. There's also pieces like the ETL when it comes to timeline to help load in that data. But when it comes to acquiring the logs, you have to, I would say that although it's best to get all the platforms or the BPS platforms that you're using, sometimes, if you start off with one or two, it can give you a fair idea of a process.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, the tools are always all over the place. Every enterprise has their own, preferred tools and their own preferred methods, and then every product has different ways of getting data out of it. So it's all different. So what the customers require is sort of a really strong toolkit to help them load the events once they get them out of whatever tool or whatever application that they are trying to get those out of. And then it's easy to manipulate the data and then understand that data simply, because you don't want to have, data analysts for every process you're trying to automate. So having this make it easy and straightforward is important, but I can tell you every customer is different, every requirement is different, and every tool exports data differently. So it's still the Wild West.
Interesting way of putting it. I suppose like you said, every client is different. Is there one set of tools that can solve the problems for every client, or is it purely a bespoke solution that's required?
On process discovery and mining, or extracting logs?
Let's go with extracting logs.
Extracting logs, it's got to be more on the bespoke side. As Bruce was saying, you can go from one client to another and have a completely different set of BPM tools out there, and picking out the data from one to another, it can be a bit of a hassle, let's say, and that's why you do need a bit of buy-in from the IT side to extract those logs within an organization, so that there's no real silver bullet for that at the moment.
And you see vendors in the space, ABBYY included, but every other vendor, really focusing on this connector strategy, trying to make these things tighter and easier and more seamless and real time. So there's a lot of improvements, a lot of effort going into helping to accelerate that and make it easier.
Okay, and you see most vendors exclusively talk about certain process areas or specific IT systems. Is it more than just order to cash and procure to pay?
Yes. They tend to be great examples to use, and they tend to be the early examples to use anything in F&A and anything when it comes to the IT infra side. That doesn't mean they're the only examples. ABBYY have got quite a few outside of the space. I see a good amount of examples now focusing on the customer experience. And it's about accelerating that process in the majority of those cases to try and have a customer not waiting because something needs to fall through a pachinko machine and come out and say yes or no for approval of something or not. So there's a lot of cases that can be used for at the moment. There's almost too many to talk about if we're honest.
Yeah, customers have the expectation of now. So these businesses that aren't delivering that are going to be in trouble. So that for sure, to Mike's point, is 100% of what we see. We also have a lot of healthcare, government, supply chain right now is those bottlenecks. They can't afford a bottleneck or a loss just because of the risks of the challenges in the supply chain. So it's gone well beyond the traditional order to cash, procure to pay for sure.
Okay, so how can process mining improve that customer experience then, and can that be measured in ROI, for instance?
Measuring customer experience in ROI is generally somewhat difficult in some cases anyway. You can certainly measure it in CSAT and have that result based on there. You can measure ROI when it comes to customer experience still instead of taking 2 hours to do a process, we could do 10 processes in that time and with the same resources. So now we've got 10 times the availability of staff and get ROI that way. But CSAT tends to be the way I see of measuring that customer experience gain.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And Mike, does every employee need task mining software on their machine?
No, but it's better if they do. So in the same way with automation tools, you can record one version of a process, one variation, and automate that. You can put process discovery or task mining on a couple of user machines and get a good idea of the process. You will not capture or you will not be able to do conformance monitoring because you don't have everyone under your view, and you won't get a full view of all the variations that are out there. You'll probably get a fair view if you hit 10-20%, but you won't get a full view. So it's much better if you do put it on everyone.
How valuable would a partial view be? Is that better than no view at all, or is a partial?
Oh, infinitely. Yeah. If you're still trying to understand the process and you get a view of it's probably a 20-80 rule, where if you put it on 20% of user machines, in some processes you can probably gain a view of 80% of the variations of a process. But again, you won't be able to do conformance. You won't have a full view. So if you do choose to automate or improve a process, you're bound to hit a snag when you get to those variations that you haven't covered. So it is worth putting it on everyone if you can. But if you can't, put it on a couple. Great.
Okay, and Bruce, what about data security concerns? How are they met when handling and processing data, process data?
It's always top of mind for every customer. You don't get around it, especially with GDPR and concerns and risk and compliance. It's really, really top of mind. But one of the benefits we have is because of our legacy processing documents and redacting data in documents for so long, we understand where information is, what type of information it is. Is it sensitive? Do we need to cover it? Do we need to hide it? How do we hide it? And things like that. Because ultimately, to Mike's point previously about does task mining belong on every desktop? Well, it's not going to be on the desktop if people aren't confident in its security and its protection of privacy and things like that. So it's really, really important that data security is top of mind with the solution, because ultimately you won't be able to deploy it if it's not.
Okay, and let's say, for instance, Bruce, you what should you do if you discover a process and it's got hundreds of variations? How do you tackle that?
Well, they always seem to have hundreds of variations. Once you get them into the analysis and you watch where things are really happening, which is part of the amazing parts of these tools, because yeah, naturally there are going to be hundreds of variations, but the understanding and having the tool also tell you which ones are really relevant or which ones are costing you money or which ones are costing you time versus which ones are just variance because of some minor change or education or something that's really just a preference of a user. So it's important to understand what those gaps are, what those changes are, and how they affect the overall performance of the process, the cost of the processing, the process, or the user satisfaction. Actually, one of the funny things Abby did earlier in the year, we did a user survey of just people in the field, and customers were really upset with their jobs because of these processes were driving them crazy and they were inflexible. So people were actually willing to quit their jobs versus, try to put up with some of the challenges they face. So multiple threads, hundreds of variations, absolutely common. Understanding which ones are going to cost business or impact performance or impact productivity and profitability are the most important. And hopefully these tools provide that insight immediately.
And that links back again to the do I need it on everyone's machine, in that you won't have an understanding of all those variations, that extra 100 variations, which might not account for a lot of workload, but certainly annoy the employees.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that. Okay, Mike. So staying with you here, what's the best single piece of advice that you would give people watching this today?
Go out and talk to the process understanding vendors. It's fairly easy to get up and running with a POC and test out a couple of the platforms. It's fairly easy. We've got the neat assessment that you saw before is freely available to anyone on the buy side. So come to NelsonHall for that. But yeah, talk to the vendors. Start with a couple of POCs. Start realizing the benefit, and then expand up.
And Bruce, same to you. Some closing advice.
Yeah, seeing is believing. The sooner you can actually try and get some data into these type of tools, the better you'll understand how quick you can create an ROI or a justification for this type of investment, and seeing for the long term how it can benefit your organization. So I think seeing is believing. Get some data loaded into these type of tools, assess their performance, and see. Most customers that actually get the data into some sort of analysis, they're moving forward with some purchase or some decision to invest in this type of process intelligence, whether they're using ABBYY or another vendor. The benefits are all there, and customers receive a very quick ROI. So it's really compelling. So seeing is believing is what I say. Just load the data and see what it tells you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there you go. Seeing is believing. A good way to end it, I think, for today. That's all we've got time for anyway. I'd like to say thank you to Mike Smart from NelsonHall and Bruce Orcutt from ABBYY for sharing their insights with us today, and for delving deeper into the benefits and potential pitfalls, of course, of process mining. This live webinar will also be available to watch on demand as well. So do make sure you share the link with any colleagues that may be interested in this discussion. This has been a BizClick Media Group production, but bye for now.